Meet Samantha, founder of Fresh Ideas Club, a strategy-first marketer who builds fandom, not just campaigns. She shares how to turn community into a channel, move audiences off of rented platforms, and why founders should lead the story, even if they hate the camera. Sam, thanks so much for being here.
I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, me too. Where are we?
We are currently at Workshop Studios, so it's a beautiful, maybe hidden gem for some, in Inglewood. So it's like in an industrial building. On one side, we've got this like industrial rail yard, and the other side is like construction equipment and stuff. But this little oasis is my ceramic studio and like my kind of #1 community space right now.
Super cool. And how long have you been in this space or working out of this space?
I've been working out of Workshop for about a year now, which is really exciting. It was like on my wish list for many years. I've worked out of about 5 ceramic studios over my ceramics journey so far. It's my favorite by far. Feels like it's been longer than a year and only a year.
And we were talking a little bit off camera about how long you've been doing ceramics.
Yeah.
You mentioned 13 years.
Yeah, about 13, 14-ish years. Everybody kind of does like maybe a little project in school, but I started at 15. My parents were like, you don't do sports. It's summer and you're not going to get a job because we want you to be a kid. Find something to do with your time so you don't just sit at home the whole time. And so I signed up for some arts classes. I signed up for a ceramics course through the city of Calgary and just like fell in love quickly and kind of kept doing it on and off. I took a pretty big break when I did my undergrad because it's expensive and undergrads are stressful. But yeah, about 13-ish years.
What is it about ceramics that you love?
It's a difficult art medium, but when you like get the first bit of like success in your brain, it just ignites something in that noggin where you're like, ooh, delicious. Like, let's keep going. I've always loved crafting things with my hands. As a kid, I would always like build boxes out of paper or like, I loved making diorama projects. Like anytime they're like, you have to make this into a diorama, I loved it. And so kind of a lot of that type of work transfers over. I love the fact that it teaches me a lot of patience. I'm not a very patient person, for better or for worse. And I love the fact that I can look at something and be like, oh, how would I make that my own? How can I add my spin to it, add my touch? Nothing is a guarantee because it's like an incredibly long art form. You can make a piece and then you've got to wait for it to dry. Making the pieces alone takes a long time. And then you've got to put it in a kiln. And then you have to hope it's okay in that first kiln. And then you have to hope it's okay in the second kiln. And like, it's just a constant like crossing your fingers process. So you've kind of fall in love with it as you go through it.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all life skills that like,
Yeah,
patience and crafting something with your hands, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How frequently, and I mean, have never done this before, but how frequently do things not work out?
Ooh, I think it depends as you move along in your practice. I think in the early days, I always tell people if they're taking like an intro class, especially wheel throwing, if you can get 2 or 3 items that you're really happy about out of the 20 you'll probably make, you're nailing it. Life's good. I think now I'm lucky that like I'm at a place where on average things work out, but not always. Like I had a kiln mishap a month ago where I got something that stuck to something else and like can't do anything about it because the way that glaze works is like it basically turns into glass when it's fired. And you can't unstick glass from each other unless you like cut stuff. So yeah, I would say like for me right now, 8 out of 10 times it works. But everybody else has their own like kind of process though.
How about any happy mistakes? Has there ever been something where you're like, oh, this is definitely a mistake. It's not what I intended it to be, but it worked out?
Yeah, it happens the most often in my sculpture work where you go in and you've got a really clear vision and either it's like kind of in the process, you start realizing like, oh, I actually want to shape it this way. This is the story I want to tell. Or like I had a piece where I did a glaze work on it and I loved it and it looked really cool. And I thought it was going to turn out one way. It came out of the kiln and it was totally different. It had all these like splotches on it. And at the time I was really upset about it. I was like, like this is not what I had envisioned. And now years later, looking back at that piece, I am like, oh, I love these splotches because it looks like rust. It looks like, you know, it's weathered a bit and like those things. So I think sometimes you learn to love what goes wrong and the unexpected of it.
You use the words, "This is not the story I want to tell," when you're talking about a ceramic piece, which I think is super fascinating, and we're going to dive into marketing again in a bit too. But what do you mean by that when you're talking about how to tell a story through a ceramic?
Yeah, I think one of the things I go into, especially with my sculpture work, I think about what feelings am I trying to get across here? What what do I want to tell people about this piece after? Even if it's only going to live in my house, if a friend comes over and they ask me about it, what am I going to tell them about that? Or one of the things too that I find really interesting with ceramics is it's forever. It's like you can walk through the streets of Rome and you will find tiny shards of ceramic pieces from the Roman Empire that are still around to this day, because that's just like the nature of the work. And so I also try to make sure I'm intentional about what am I bringing into this world that will be here, that will outlive me in one way or another, whether this becomes a broken up pile of pieces or it stays in its full form. So I kind of try to think about like what this maybe artifact of my practice is, which is stressful sometimes, but it's okay.
There's not much that we do as humans anymore, maybe, especially from an art form perspective, that you can think about if somebody picked this up on the street in 500 years, what would they think?
With a painting, if it sits aside, it's not treated well, it collects dust, can't really like go wash it off. Ceramic, you can. You just pick it up, you pick up a sculpture, you go rinse off the dust, you're good to go. As long as it doesn't get broken. And if it does, like there's so many interesting repair techniques, or just like kind of leave it broken because it tells an interesting story that way. Yeah, I think it's like a funny process of how we all get there.
Totally.
Yeah.
And unique to everybody too.
Totally. Yeah.
Fast forward 13 years, you are obviously doing it avidly still, but also selling pieces.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that journey. I'm always curious about this journey from, a passion, something that you just did on the weekends kind of thing for fun, to a business, and what that looked like for you, maybe when you realized that, oh, this is something that I could sell, that somebody would pay for.
Yeah, I think for a lot of artists, it gets pretty scary to sell your work. I was terrified because it's really vulnerable to show up somewhere and be like, I've made the decision that this art is worth a certain dollar value. If that dollar value is correct, you don't know. Sometimes it depends how the market perceives it. Sometimes it's worth more than what the market is willing to pay for it at that time, economics, etc. Because of my work in marketing with brands and my passion for working with like local homegrown brands, you often end up at spaces like markets and art spaces. Especially I've worked in beverage quite a lot where they've always had that connection to the arts, which is probably one of the reasons why I've always ended up in that space. I was like, I really want to hang out with these really cool artists. What is the best way to do that? Oh, probably show up to the thing that they're at and not be a customer. I loved being at markets. I loved being around artists. And so I always wanted to do that and figure out a way to kind of be there. And then a lot of people started asking me if I sold my work. And I kind of got to a place where I finally was like, I think I'm making pieces that I could turn into production. Because making one-offs to then turning work into production level is a very different system. There's a consistency you have to get through. There's a like regularity as well. So it's kind of a few different things that came together to make the decision. But I started off with just like one market. I was like, I'm going to sell some pieces. And if I like it, great. And if I don't, all good. I don't have to commit. I can go back and continue this as like a hobby. But I really loved it. I just kind of kept going from there. And now it's like a weird addiction where I get exhausted from pushing myself to like produce tons and do markets all the time. But then I'm like a glutton for punishment, because once I get to the market and I suffer through the setup, I love it. I love being there. I love connecting with customers. Most of the things I love about my marketing career, I get to translate over into my ceramics, and I get to take a lot of those learnings and transfer it over too, which is fun. I get to test myself and be like, am I as good as I think I am?
Yeah, I think that's super fascinating. I was just going to ask if you ever like test a theory or like, on yourself before you apply it to a business that you're working with or whatever the case.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think the thing that's nice is that when I'm chatting with businesses about, problems that they're facing, I am able to now pull on a lot more real-time data about, hey, with my business, when I made this adjustment, this is what happened. When I approached social media this way, this is what happened. When I, spent the time to invest in proper product photography, or I spent the time to invest in good content, I've seen an actual difference. And I can tell that. And especially because I work a lot with like entrepreneurs, it's scary. Money's tight. Every dollar has to be super impactful. So I'm able to really kind of connect those dots better.
When you say you work specifically, or not specifically with, but mostly with entrepreneurs, what do you mean by that? Because that seems like a very niche area of marketing.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I didn't go into my career with the explicit goal to work with entrepreneurs, but I did go into it being like, I'm obsessed with local businesses. I'm obsessed with local brands. How can I work with these people? And by nature, they're entrepreneurs. I think I've once maybe worked in a role where the person that was the head of the company didn't also found it. There's a different conversation that you have because they also have oftentimes bootstrapped a lot to get there, even if they have, investor support. And there's a level of empathy you have to have, I think, with working with entrepreneurs, especially in marketing, because you're not just telling the story of their product, you're telling the story of them and how they got their product. And to be trusted with that story is an honor and terrifying.
Definitely. Do you find there's ever resistance to the founder telling their story?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest, the founders I love working with the most are the ones that don't want to be in front of the camera, but are happy to do it because they know it makes a difference. I find those are the ones that have the most like pure intentions and genuine intentions with their business. Oftentimes, especially in the world that I've worked in, which is very consumer facing, very product based, you don't do it because you're like, I'm going to make a ton of money here. Or at least back in the day you didn't. Maybe now there's more opportunities if you play your cards right, but you do it because you have been working at this thing for a long time. You probably started at a farmer's market and moved your way up, and here you are now, or you're doing it because you went somewhere else and you wanted to come and do it better here and do it your own way. I love working with entrepreneurs in that regard.
I find it really interesting, when you scroll through your LinkedIn feed these days, right? Like everybody, and I'm not saying this negatively, I think it's great from a media perspective, but everybody is a thought leader. Everybody is a founder-led,
Thank goodness for
story-driven
ChatGPT.
storyteller, whatever
Yeah.
the case, right? And I think the idea there is great. But I'm curious from your perspective, you've been in the industry for a while. Is that new? Or is it just that it's like being latched onto by kind of everybody at this point?
It's kind of both. I think there's a lot more people are realizing that founder storytelling is its own marketing channel. We talked a lot about when I was at Partake Brewing, actually, was how did we work with the founder to help tell his story, because it was so mission driven. He was solving a problem that was not just for himself, but for a community. So we worked a lot with him. And now like it's something that he does all the time, really comfortably, really regularly. I think LinkedIn has made it easier for a lot of people to share their stories. I think there is, unfortunately, the way that the algorithm works, a certain pattern of how that story is told to catch on to the right thing. But LinkedIn's a funny place where people also gain more by interacting with content there than if they were to on Instagram. Because if you interact with content on LinkedIn, it's going to come up in the feed of X person commented on this. It's going to show you that you're linked with that person in some way or that topic. So there's more reward for users to actively engage with content in comparison to other platforms.
So it's not necessarily a new idea, but it's more accessible. Then.
Definitely.
Fair to say?
Yeah, I would say so. I think founders have always been encouraged to share their stories, but it's never been as easy to reach wide audiences with your story as it has been with LinkedIn.
We often talk about marketing as like a very crowded, market, I suppose. And I'm sure you know everything about that world. Do you have any leads on maybe what the next kind of way to tell a founder story is? You know what I mean? If LinkedIn is kind of the current one where everybody's flocking to because everybody's seen success there, what's the next thing?
I think there's a couple channels. I think one channel is TikTok. We're seeing a ton of founders tell their stories there. A ton of people launch businesses on TikTok, whether or not they're a small artist to they are, launching a brand new clothing brand and they're doing with their dad and the story is like designed to be shared on TikTok. Another platform I think that is growing pretty quickly is Substack. A lot of people are getting onto Substack and YouTube. YouTube is like this quiet giant I think a lot of people forget about. being a fantastic platform. It is lasted. It continues to drive reach. But YouTube's funny because people don't really talk about what they watch on YouTube. It's like this, I don't know the last time you asked your friend what they watch on YouTube. I don't talk to my friends about it, but we all watch it. But
Interesting.
none of us tell each other about what we're watching on YouTube.
Interesting. It's going to be my mission now to go on all my friends' computers and just go
And
to the
that's
homepage and see,
be like,
see what's
what's your
there.
what's your YouTube homepage? Because that tells you so much about somebody, and really embarrassing if you have to share your screen on a work call on YouTube and you don't realize that.
Substack, I find that really interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Substack is a subscription kind of platform, right?
Yeah, it's a blog subscription type platform.
Right.
Sometimes they'll like offer certain content for free. Sometimes they'll offer content under like a paywall. I'm seeing a lot of people, like creators, especially like in the more artistic field of creators and thought leaders, moving to Substack. So they'll do some stuff on LinkedIn, kind of breadcrumb you, and then be like, you can read the rest of my Substack.
And do you find that people are getting large audiences under a pay gate, or what does that look like? Because I feel like typically people are kind of like hesitant to put any sort of money, whether it be $5 or anything like that, just to read some content that they may perceive that they could find it elsewhere for free.
I think Substack only works for most people if you have an existing audience. I think it's like that next step. So you've built your audience on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever it is. You want to do longer form writing. And, once again, you don't always have to have it paid, but most people do. It's that next step. We're seeing that too, like even on Instagram, like there's that subscriber model now on Instagram. YouTube has options for people to become subscribers to channels like in a paid model where you get access to like exclusive content. So you're not getting fully cut off, but maybe the rest of it's happening here. Same with Patreon. A lot of podcast people are doing like extra stuff on their Patreon. You get one episode every 2 weeks here on Spotify, but if you want an episode every week, you have to pay for it. Even on Spotify, they have now like an additional subscription model.
I think this is all really interesting, especially because we've talked about this in marketing and content creation in general. We've talked about this idea of this shift to the creator economy over the past couple of years, and I feel like this conversation right here is kind of a perfect example of that actually happening. Do you see that? Do you think that is relevant? Do you think that is the future? Where do you stand on this whole creator economy idea?
I think it's a mixed bag. I think influencer marketing in 2025 versus like what it was in even 2022 is super different. I think the creator economy has always existed, but it used to be the artisan economy, right? Because what creators are there folks who have decided that they've got a unique POV, that they can cultivate an audience that aligns with that POV, and that they can possibly make some money off of it. I don't see how that's very different from like an artisan, a musician, whatever, back in the day that had the same thing. They showed up with a unique POV. They knew they could cultivate an audience one way or another. And they knew they probably could make some money from there because people wanted to pay them for their skills. Folks that get into the creator space just simply because they want to be creators is different than people coming in being like, I have a really interesting way to look at this thing. So if you're a fashion creator, maybe you grew up with not a lot of money and you had to thrift everything growing up and everything was secondhand. So now you become like really focused on, sustainable fashion. That's an interesting story, and that all ties in versus just being like, I want to do it for the glitz and the glam. I think those folks are still around. They always will be. I think that's the same thing that we've seen in the artisan world. We've all seen people who are like, I'm going to become a musician because it's so glamorous. And then they realize you spend most of your time sleeping in motels because that's the most budget you're going to get if you're lucky. So I think it's always going to be around. The one thing that's weird to me though is that there's a lot more kids that want to become like YouTubers instead of, I want to become a pop star, I want to become a YouTuber. Or instead of I want to become like a famous movie actor, I want to be a TikTok creator, which is just interesting because those platforms have such a smaller life in our world in comparison to like other mediums.
I haven't given that much thought until you mentioned it, but I do think that's fascinating, especially because realistically, you're choosing a platform at that point. You're not necessarily talking about a style of content, right? You're platforming the platform rather than I want to be a filmmaker, I want to be a vlogger, or whatever the case. I wonder why that is. Is that just the popularity of the platform, or?
I think it's the popularity of the platform. I think there is a level of an expectation that maybe that medium is going to like stick around longer than it might. I don't know. It's a weird little thing. I think there's an interesting dynamic going on right now where people are like, I can make a lot of money following, etc., from this social media world, but those are all rented platforms. And that's one of the things I always advocate with my clients as well, and any organization that I'm working with, is you need to figure out a way to build your audience and have access to connecting and contacting and talking to your audience in ways that aren't just on rented platforms. We've seen it. Instagram goes down for like 4 hours, and businesses that run only on Instagram, that are only selling products on Instagram, have no way to sell products for 4 hours. And that's huge. You know, I think about, oh, well, like this account you have 200,000 followers on Instagram or TikTok, but you have 500 email subscribers. Cool. Great. What's going to happen if that gets shut down? Because it's just rented space. Sure, it's a free sort of platform, but you just like, nothing's a guarantee. And that makes me really nervous for a lot of businesses that have spent, understandably, lots of time building really big audiences on these platforms very specifically.
Yeah, I know that makes perfect sense, especially when there's, threats of TikTok being shut down in the States or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, the Canada offices are getting closed right now. So anytime I see a business investing lots of marketing dollars, whether or not that's actual spend or labor hours, exclusively into rented spaces, I get really nervous.
So what are some of the ways that you recommend that these businesses can take their audience from one platform and internalize them? Or
you have to think about value add. It's hard to get somebody to go from Instagram to email. Email inboxes are flooded with nonsense. We've all signed up for some big retailer and they spam you with emails and you have to hit unsubscribe 5 times to get rid of it. So I often try to communicate with businesses about especially in email, there's 2 tracks. There's storytelling, which sometimes you can do in the other track, which is selling. Sometimes you can do both at the same time, but not always. And sometimes you don't need to. The selling side is, that's your automations, your abandoned carts, your flash sales, whatever. But your newsletter side is where the value add can come from. That's where people find out about product drops the first time. That's where people hear from your founder. That's where people, learn about, hey, we want to hear your feedback on this product. We want to, connect with you in this way. I think for every, Instagram follower you have, it's going to take 20 to 50 to turn that into 1 email subscriber. But if you can turn them into 1 email subscriber and you can keep them for a long time and keep them engaged, that is so much more valuable than an Instagram follower, hands down.
Why is that more valuable than an Instagram follower? Besides the obvious, like we've already discussed, which is, the platform could go down, whatever the case may be.
I mean, there's data that shows that the money that you can make off of email marketing is high if done right. They're showing a deeper level of engagement because they're inviting you into their personal inbox to engage with them. And I think also you just have their contact information. You've got their demographic data. So it gets you to learn more about your audience. On Instagram, you could have 100,000 followers that are all based in the UK, but if you move to Canada and you can't ship your products to the UK or for whatever reason, what are you going to do, right? Like, or for some reason, maybe you're in Canada and you blow up huge in Japan, but your products aren't sold in Japan. You can't get your services to Japan. Neat. You've got to focus on Canada. It's like, I think about when I used to work at Phillips Brewing and we would produce music festivals, one of the things that we'd run into sometimes is we would look at artists about who we're going to book and bring in. And there'd be artists that would come down the line and they're like, oh, these guys are huge. Like all their metrics look correct. But then we did more investigating. We're like, oh, they're just really big in Germany. They're Canadian, but for some reason they're huge in Germany, but they're not big enough in Canada to headline, unfortunately. So we have to put them third on the billing, even though you go to their Spotify account and they've got, 1 million monthly listeners. But like 100,000 are in Canada, and that's where we're selling tickets and that's where the event's happening.
I feel like a lot of businesses or maybe even consumers. Maybe it's a misconception from a consumer side that, because we can ship anywhere on the world and social media reaches anywhere, that everything is global. But it sounds like we as marketers probably don't think that way.
No, and I don't think you should, because like your product shouldn't be perceived globally unless you are huge. Like it's the same thing, and I will sound like a broken record because I'm sure any marketer you've talked to has said this, but if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one. So if your product could apply to everybody in the world, who is it for then? You're not going to be able to get that like early group of hardcore advocates. When we think about, consumer adoption of a product or service, it's that bell curve. And those early adopters over here are so essential in becoming advocates for your brand, giving you feedback on like, hey, this isn't working, because they really care about you and they believe in your process before you hit that like kind of mass reach. I just think like there's a lot of opportunity to, of course, be like reach global, but your message won't land globally. I mean, I will not name the name of the brand, but I remember a number of years ago when Calgary started to get more attention from big brands, especially during Stampede, there was this big billboard right by the farmer's market, actually, advertising a meal prep service. And it said, "We love the YYC." And if you're from Calgary, you know that's so incorrect. The YYC? What? We're not in Toronto. It's not the Six. It's not the same thing. And if you try to grow too quickly, you miss those little moments. And so then you have people like me that drive by and go, not right.
Yeah.
That's incorrect.
There's nothing better than going through those like 50 marketing mistakes threads or whatever and seeing these ridiculous signs.
Oh, yeah. Or like the translation that went wrong.
Yeah.
Or, like even within Canada, Canada's huge. The way in which a product is marketed in Quebec versus a product is marketed in BC is different. You're not going to go to Quebec and talk about Canada Day the same way as you're going to talk about St. John Baptiste Day. Because in Quebec, July 1st is moving day. Funny little things like that are so important, I think, to consider when you're doing your planning and communications.
You recently started Fresh Ideas Club.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
Very exciting. Terrifying. Exciting. I think one of the biggest things you probably will take out of this is that I'm always scared and always excited. And I think both have to exist at the same time.
Otherwise, you're delusional, right?
Oh, 100%. If you're not a little scared, like you're probably not doing something that is worth it. So the Fresh Ideas Club is one of my new projects. It is a brand strategy studio. Basically came from the place of, I've been in-house a lot. I know what happens when sometimes you have a gap in, human power, big project comes down the pipeline, somebody goes on mat leave, etc. And you're like, I just need somebody that can helicopter in, get to work quickly, identify problems, things like that. So that's one thing that I do at Fresh Ideas Club is that, fractional CMO support. And everybody offers fractional CMO support, but that's what I'm really good at is jumping in quick, learning, identifying, hey, like, here's some efficiency options. Why are you spending $20,000 a year on this thing? And like asking those tough questions. Other services I'll have is like audits, same thing of coming in, trying to provide that fresh idea of, here's all the things to look at. Here's your gaps. And here's a different perspective. And then like campaign work kind of things. But Fresh Ideas Club really came from a place of, I want it to be fun. I want it to feel like me. And what am I the best at? It's coming in with fresh ideas.
You said you asked the tough questions. And I think that's so critical, especially for speed of service, right? Like you're trying to get to a solution fast and cost effective and that sort of thing. Do these companies know what to expect when they're engaging with you?
I hope so. I think one of the things especially with Fresh Ideas Club, I like to start with an audit. Because what happens, it's kind of like the same thing every time. Somebody calls or texts or emails me and says, hey, Sam, I need help with my marketing. And then I go, what does that mean? And then they go, well, I need to reach more people. I need to make more sales, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay. Or they go, oh, like I have an agency, but I just don't feel like we're doing enough. And I'm like, that's great. That doesn't tell me anything. I think I've learned over the years that I don't like to go into places where I don't feel like I have a really good, clear picture. I can't be as fast. I can't get to the, meat of it all. So I like to start off with an audit with clients. And it's like one-time thing. You can walk away. I'll give you a few recommendations. You can walk away, go call somebody else, no problem. All good with me. If we're not the right fit, no problem. But this way, I kind of get a look under the hood before I commit to buying the car. Because I really feel like when I work with clients, it's also my personal work on the line and my personal brand and style. Like, I need to know what I'm getting myself into before I say, yeah, I'm putting my name behind what the work is that's coming out of this place.
Yeah, I love the approach, and it's critical for both parties to be bought into the relationship before you actually move forward. So I love what you're doing.
Yeah, it feels like we're dating, you know? We got to go like, hey, I'll get to know more about this kind of part of your life and how do these things play into factor, and then you got to get this analysis and understanding of, because my approach is very 360 degrees. I look at every detail, even down to things like, do you have a marketing team? Okay, yes. Do they get to be in meetings about product development? Do they regularly get to meet with your founders and CEOs and key decision makers? No? You've got a problem.
Mm-hmm. How frequently do you find that either yourself or the company bows out of the relationship after the audit period?
I think it depends. I think one of the things that's really illuminating about the audit period is I get to learn a lot about their work style too. How fast are you going to get me your assets? Because sure, I can invoice you. You can pay me money to do this thing. Cool. But are you going to get me what I actually need to look at your stuff fast? No? Interesting. That tells me a lot. Or what content do you not have? Or what do you think is good? I think that helps. I haven't been in a situation yet where we've bowed out, but I have been in situations where I've learned a lot about the client before they realized I was learning anything about them, because they sometimes just don't send me things.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You're engaging on these, maybe, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe like smaller stints, if you will, from that perspective, to, being in-house in multiple roles previously. What do you find are the benefits and drawbacks of maybe either?
The obvious drawback is there's a lot less stability when you do your own thing. Whether that's my ceramics world or Fresh Ideas Club, there's no guarantees in the same way that you have when you're in-house. You also have more time and you have more leeway, but there's more politics. There's a lot more of, you've got to be careful when you're going in and asking tough questions, because you don't know if that person you're asking the tough questions to, son is the one who did all the design work, and you're like, what's going on here? Like that, because then that can get really awkward and tough, because if you're in-house, you then have to have lunch with that person. When you're, doing your own thing and coming in from an audit perspective, even the term audit, I think, helps business owners get into the mindset of knowing I'm coming into like with a fine tooth comb. It's not personal. I'm just looking at it as like strictly business to help your business. When you're in-house, personalities get into play for sure. You just also have more time. I think like there's not the same level of urgency most of the time. My audits now can take anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the level of information I have and details and et cetera. In-house, if I go in, it's kind of the same approach I go when I go in-house, is like try to look at everything, but I can't do a full audit because you're also onboarding and doing all these other things. So it takes longer to get that amount of information.
I'd like to talk about the accessibility of marketing and this idea of, everybody can watch a YouTube course as an example and become a marketer, and people are falling for that, and that's unfortunate, and obviously kind of puts a bad rep on marketing in general, or, liken it to us in video production or content production in general. What does that look like for you? Have you ever had experiences like that? It could come in the form as, oh, my son's girlfriend took a course, and why are you better than her, or whatever the case. What does that look like in your world? Are you cleaning up after these kind of situations?
Oh, so many times. I think honestly where it happens the most is agencies getting a really bad rap, because you don't need to get certified to start an advertising agency or a marketing agency. It's not like, sure, there is the chartered marketing titling and et cetera, but not a lot of people are adopting it. Understandably, there's, some limitations why people might not, but like you can't just go start an accounting firm without being a CPA. But you could go start an advertising agency and have you don't even have to take a YouTube course. You just have to get clients and convince them to believe you, which is bonkers to me. So I think a lot of agencies get a bad rap for it. because there's so many out there that can con their way into it. I've been in situations where I've seen agencies that have unfortunately like conned an entrepreneur into working with them because they don't know marketing and they're just really desperate and eager to get help. I find sometimes folks, especially ones that are like less legit, know what words to say and what phrases to throw out.
So they know it's a con. They're doing it actively.
Sometimes. That's just me. That's my hot take. Sometimes they do. Or they like know like, hey, if I spatter in enough of like these acronyms, people don't ever want to feel dumb, so they're not going to ask. They look smart because they're using all these acronyms and jargon, and then the client doesn't want to feel dumb and doesn't want to ask. And they go, well, look at this case study. And then here we are. So it's tough. I think one of the things that I find so difficult with marketing, and because I'm such an empath, is that I hate seeing people get taken advantage of. And I hate seeing marketers get a bad rap, because not a single person that I went to school with and I studied marketing with went into it because they're like, I'm going to make a lot of money here. Right. You went and did finance for that.
Yeah.
Or supply chain. You didn't do marketing because you're like, I'm going to make bank. Yeah. You did it because you love the craft. And not everybody nowadays is always in it for that. But I also think it's really great that it's a really accessible career option for people. I love the fact that people can go on and learn more. Like, I use those YouTube videos. I'll go watch a Clavio tutorial, just kind of knowing when and how to use that information, if it's actually relevant. And that comes with time and resources and experience.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I agree that it's great that these things are accessible, but it's also tough, when somebody gets burned, they pay way too much for something that had no outcome or whatever the case. And then a good firm comes along and you're trying to clean up and actually have a good impact on this business. And their budgets have shrunk because they're super skeptical, or they just they hate the term marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's like you have to act as like a bit of a relationship therapist. Even when I've been in-house, I've had to convince other leaders to be like, no, this agency's good. These videographers are good. It's worth investing here. And I had to put my name on the line. And that's where I really come on to rely on relationships and trust, and hearing from friends of, oh, they worked with this person. They're good. Okay, I trust this person here. And then when I was agency side, and even now too, it's like clients come in and they will rant to you about either their current agency or the ones they've had before, or they go, I hate agencies. And I get it. There's a lot of bad ones out there, but there's way more great ones. I think mechanics get the same rap, where they're like, oh God, mechanics always try to rip you off. And then you find ones that don't, that are great and talented and passionate, but you hear about those ones less, because it's less fun I think, for most people to talk positively than negatively.
Maybe great marketers just need to market better.
So that's the funniest thing too, is that the people that are the most talented, that are the best at what they do, they're too busy serving their clients to talk about themselves. And so it's this weird thing where you want to find an agency partner that talks about themselves enough that you're not like, what's going on here? But not too much where you're like, do you have too much free time? What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's this weird balance.
It's a fine balance. Yeah. I mean, we see it in video production all the time. When was the last time we put out a reel? I don't even know.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But because you're busy with clients, you're busy making sure that they're handled and you're concerned with their business first.
Right.
It's hard.
If there's somebody listening that's starting a business and they're starting to think about marketing, what are the questions that they should ask themselves off the hop?
I would ask yourself, what role do you want marketing to play in your business? I think that question helps you decide if you want to start with in-house or if you want to start with contractors or agencies. Do you know what the stories you're trying to tell with this brand, with this product, or do you not know? Because that also helps you find who are you trying to partner with. I think also for people that are launching businesses, your marketing folks that you work with, whether they're contractors, agencies, or in-house, are partners. They have a massive impact on if your business will grow or not. And you need to view them as partners, because they're the ones that can come in and sit down and tell you if your laundry stinks. And it's tough. It's tough to have those conversations. So I think finding somebody that you trust is really important. And I think the last thing to ask yourself is where do I think my audience is? And if you don't know, then hire somebody who can help you figure that out. But if you do feel like you've got a good idea of where your audience is, then you can go from there, because some marketers are really good at like SEO, Google advertising, all that kind of stuff, but terrible at like copywriting, brand storytelling, campaign planning. But if you're just like a D2C business right now and you're very functional, that's okay. Start there. I think trying to figure out where your audience is helps you identify who to work with.
How does like your actual physical location affect what you're doing from a marketing perspective, but then also your community and what that means to you, how important it is to you, and obviously your back, so there's probably a good reason for that too. So
I had the joy of moving out to Victoria in 2021. COVID was crazy times, and I got a call from a really incredible brewery out in the island, Phillips Brewing, to go join their team. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up to go. What I didn't realize leaving Calgary and going there was, oh my gosh, all of the people that I call for help are pretty much in Calgary. And that's like, videographers, that's photographers, that's a graphic designer, that's a print shop. Like all of those things I had to rewrite. I had to be like, who am I working with now? Because unfortunately, I can't always fly out my favorite videographer to like come and help me produce some projects. So I think that was hard. I was really starting from ground zero. The nice thing is that, the company I was working for had existing relationships, but I wasn't able to come in with my same toolkit in the same ways. And then for me, I think community is like the be all end all. I think we are nothing without community. When I was in Victoria and I was homesick, I just flew back to Calgary at times. Even if my friends were like booked and busy because I gave them 2 days notice that I was coming back to town, even just like walking around, Inglewood and stopping at a coffee shop and seeing familiar faces, like that's really lovely. The thing about community is it's really founded on helping people and helping each other without expectation of something else in return. And that's one thing I did love about being in Victoria. It's a small city. And so that's a really big part of being there is it is about helping people. People are really eager to connect and learn and hear about what you're working on. I had a really interesting conversation with the artist Michael Bernard Fitzgerald. He came out to Victoria, I want to say like summer of 2022, and he was doing his farm tour at the time, also a very community-based project, where he would visit different farms across the country, bring this tent, pop up and do performances. And so I bought tickets to his show in Victoria. He's one of my favorite artists and reminds me a lot of, my community in Calgary and what I love. He's played at Folk Fest a bunch of times. He was good friends with some of the founders that I used to work with back in the day. And so he kind of represented a lot, also just good music. So I go, sit down, watch the show. It's incredible. I look around at everybody like that's gathered there, sitting under this tent on a, I think it was a bumblebee farm. After the show, he's like, hey, come up and chat if you want. So I went up and chatted with him and we chatted about, our mutual connections and things like that. And he asked me, he's like, how are you finding Victoria? I was like, it's good. I was like, I'm having trouble feeling like I'm still trying to figure out like my favorite coffee shop. I'm still trying to figure out these new routines. And by that point, I'd been in Victoria for over a year. And he was like, in my travels, I've learned that you only get to find those places once. You only get to find your favorite coffee shop once. You only get to find your new go-to bakery, the grocery store, the commute, the local like watering hole that your friends gather at. You only really get to do that once. He's like, some people find that later in life. Some people find it really early. He's like, but in all my travels, I still end up back in Calgary. And I was like, whoa, cool. That's not what I expected to hear from this conversation. And it stuck with me. And it's something that stuck with me the whole time. And so the summer of 2023, when I was deciding if I was going to come back to Calgary, I spent a lot of time thinking about, well, what do I have there? I'm walking away from an incredible job. I'm walking away from like a lifestyle that a lot of people would love. The amount of times that people would be like, you've got it so good. You're living on the island, you're by the ocean, you're working in a really cool job. Like, what else could you want? And there was still something inside missing for me. And it was the fact that I had already done it. I had already built a really strong community here in Calgary. It mattered so much more to me than everything else. And so it was a hard realization, a lot of like sitting in my car, looking at the ocean, crying, just because you're just like trying to figure it out. And you're like, maybe if I just stare at this big, beautiful body of water, I'll feel more connected to this space. And it just never happened. So I was like, well, and it was funny because I also had a therapist at the time. She's like, you keep like running up against walls here, but then you go back to Calgary and there's doors open everywhere for you to run into. Why are you going to keep running into the wall? And I was like, yeah. But I was like committed to trying to make it work. And I spent, 2.5, almost 3 years working hard to make it work. And I have great friends and folks in Victoria, and I'm grateful for it. But I never felt invested in the city the same way I feel in Calgary. And so Michael was right. You can only do it once, unfortunately. And now I go back to Victoria and I've got a go-to coffee shop, but it's not my favorite one.
I love that description. I've never heard it that way either.
Yeah,
It's really fascinating.
Rocked my world.
Yeah, totally. Do you think there's anything special about Calgary as a city, or maybe the people in it, or the place?
Oh, for sure. I think the fact that we have a winter, honestly, humbles us a lot, which helps. Living in a place that didn't have snow, and if it did, it was like idyllic and beautiful, and the entire city shut down, so you didn't have to do anything. The fact that we have to put up with snow and work through it here, I think it humbles people in a lot of ways. I think the other thing too about Calgary is it, especially for me in a lot of ways growing up, it felt like an underdog city because it's not Toronto, it's not Montreal, it's not Vancouver. Artists don't stop here the same way. I'm very like focused on music in my life, and so artists don't really stop here as much as they do now, which is great. It was often viewed as like only an oil and gas town. We were very affected by boom and bust cycles in that industry. There's this funny thing that happens here where you'll be out with friends, getting drinks, whatever, hanging out the ship, and maybe you've got plans after. And if the plans aren't like ticket-based or super exclusive, whoever you're hanging out with, you're probably going to invite them to what you're doing after. You're not going to get up and go, okay, well, that was nice, and then not say anything about what you're going to next. And you'll invite them. And that's not something that happens in other cities. And people say they will. It does not. Even when I studied abroad briefly in my undergrad, I remember I was, weirdly, we had like 4 Calgarians, a bunch of Americans, a bunch of folks from Chile and other parts of Europe. And the thing that stuck out about the 4 Calgarians out of everybody was that we always were the hosts of the get-togethers at the study abroad. We'd always be like, hey, come back to our place. Like, we're doing this, or come on over. Like, we're cooking dinner. Like, I don't think that makes us better people. It was just a different kind of thing. It was always an invite, always an open invite to come join. It's something I even do now. Like, it's at the time of recording, it's Folk Fest weekend, which is my favorite weekend of the summer, maybe of the whole year. And I always go to my way to make sure to share on my socials that if you want to go to Folk Fest, you've never been before, and the thing that's stopping you is you don't have somebody to go with, text me. Let's go. Come tag along. Come join me on my tarp. Like, there's always space for you there. And I think that's something different about Calgary, because everybody at Folk Fest kind of does that. And I don't think it's just, you buy a ticket to Folk Fest and then you get this like guide of how to do, like, everybody just kind of does it.
It's so interesting hearing you talk about that idea, because I think it's something that everybody recognizes here, but isn't able to put into words. And I don't think that, I'm sure many people have tried, and there's probably good descriptions for it. But like you said, something in the water, it just, who knows what it is.
Yeah,
Right?
I don't know. It's like something about the culture here. Maybe it's that Western hospitality that folks talk about, but the fact that everybody is so generous. Like, I moved into a new place in April, and I'm a renter. Sometimes people aren't as invested in making friends with their neighbors if you're a renter. And our neighbors next door are this lovely, like, older couple who own their home and have seen, I'm sure, their selection of renters come through where I live, and they were friendly. So excited to invite me to their garden, to show me their garden, because they saw we planted flowers. And then one of the folks goes inside and brings out like an old school film canister with poppy seeds to give me. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you so much. And like, I'll bring this back. She's like, don't even worry about it. And then the neighbor that was next door that was like mowing the lawn, they made sure to introduce me to him, and we started chatting. And then he comes out a little bit later and he's like, oh, here's some like baked goods. That doesn't happen. That's like such a very kind, nice thing. But that's happened to me like a lot in Calgary. And maybe that's me. Maybe I'm just like really aggressively friendly with people. But I don't think so, because I hear about this happening with other folks I know in the city. You're sitting at a table and, so you hear somebody talking about something else, you'll jump in. The fact that I was like in line to get into the Stampede grounds and I'm hearing people do networking beside me, I'm like, this is bonkers, but I love this, that everybody is so focused on building like connections with people.
Now's the time, right? Like we just came out of Stampede, as you mentioned, and that's where I think probably the majority of the networking happens in the city for the year. So.
Totally. It's like crazy how much, and kind of stressful, I think, for entrepreneurs. I feel like a lot of people feel a lot of pressure during Stampede to do a lot of networking. I do a lot of my networking at FolkFest, but that's just vibes. That's just like, we're here, we both love this artist. Oh, cool. How did you find this artist? Like, oh, what do you do outside of this? Like, it's just a gathering place.
And it's nice that it doesn't have to be about work, right? Like that's the nice thing about meeting at FolkFest or whatever the case may be. It's not a networking event. You're not there to grab business cards, but to have a great conversation.
Yeah, it's less painful, for sure.
Definitely.
We've all walked into the networking events where you're like, oh, you are just here to milk whatever you can get out of people for your gain, rather than coming in from a place of curiosity.
Yes, and nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that conversation.
No. And also, do you want to do it? Like, do you want to be the person that's like, because that probably feels icky too.
Right. I'm curious if you've ever had any experiences with a mentor or a coach or anything like that throughout your career.
So many.
And what is the value of that to you?
I would not be where I am without my mentors and coaches. And they come in a variety of forms. I think I've had people who I've been like more explicitly like, hey, you're a mentor for me. And I've had the opportunity to like chat with them and work with them and text them about, hey, what's going on with this? Or I'm dealing with this problem. What do you think? And they've come to me in a kind of variety of ways. And sometimes they're people that I'm actively working with, or they're people that I once worked with, that I really, respect and admire their careers and how they approach problems. But the other thing I have is like an unofficial board of directors in my life. Some of them know they're on it and some of them don't. I actually have a group chat that's like our little board of advisors, and it's 3 of us. And we all kind of work in marketing, comms a little bit, but all of us have different kind of approaches to things. And a problem comes up and we'll bounce it around in the group chat. Sometimes I'll send screenshots of like, hey, so what I want to say in an email, is this like delusional? Is this a real thing to say? But then in other places in my life, I go, okay, like you're the friend I go to, or you're the person I go to ask about this question, or you're the person I go to talk about finance. You're the friend I go to talk about, navigating tough conversations at work. Like even my mom is a mentor for me because she spent her career being a people manager. And I got the luxury of growing up with that and hearing about problems that she was dealing with at work and how she approached them. And so when I would deal with issues, I was like, okay, like I'm calling my mom and asking her, hey, when you had this situation, what did you do? Because she grew up in different times, but she also grew her career in like more traditional environments. And I've always worked in non-traditional, but I know there's benefits to both.
What do you mean by non-traditional?
Like just not as corporate.
Yeah.
There's not always an HR department. There's not always policies and procedures for everything. But she's worked in environments that have always been like that. And those usually exist for a reason.
Do you find in those non-traditional environments that you're able to move a little bit quicker just because there's less red tape?
Absolutely. Like I said, I'm not a patient person. I think that is one of my special skills, for better or for worse. I like to get stuff done. I like to check a box. I like to move quickly, and I like to see things through all the way. In non-traditional environments, less corporate, there's less stops along the way. Less people have to be involved at the table in discussions. You can pivot quickly. You can adapt quickly. But then also, like, there's less supports in other areas. So there's pros and cons.
I think the beauty of kind of small business these days is the fact that you can move quickly, and you need to in this market. Obviously, there's benefits of the opposite as well. So
yeah, definitely.
We were talking a little bit off camera about some like funny marketing mistakes and that sort of thing. You mentioned a gotcha moment at CBC.
Ugh, yes. What a fun time.
If I may.
Let's do it. Yeah. So I think it's funny because it's kind of, I presented at Social West this year, and I had a similar thing that I shared, which was, a brand crisis is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I feel like if you do enough work with the media, maybe a gotcha moment is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So I've had mine. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but what had happened was that a new report had come out that was, talking about health and safety. I was working for an organization that it related to this health and safety news that came out, and got calls from CBC. They're like, hey, we want to like do an on-air interview with you, radio, thank goodness. So my face wasn't seen as it was happening. And we're going to put you in Kelowna, Victoria, and Vancouver. We're going to do it like back to back. And I was like, cool, no, good, no problem. Chat with the journalist ahead of time, kind of got an idea of what the conversation would be about. I was like, cool. I was like, I can comment on this. I can't comment on that. Like the report's too new for me to really know much about that. Like still a lot to digest in it. And they're like, all good. So we could do the Kelowna interview. Life's great. You know, they have, as you do with most of these types of stories of like new report comes out, they go to the street, they get, you know, commentary from the public, they play that, and then they interview the expert or the rep. I'm listening to this, I'm like, cool, no problem. Get on there. Life's good. Questions are easy breezy. Okay, great. Love it. Go to Victoria 15 minutes later. And then they play similar clip again. I'm like, okay. So same people we kind of asked everywhere. Got it. But the clip's like got a couple parts edited out. Not everything that the public's saying in this clip is 100% positive. So I was like, okay. So we're chatting, asked me like one or two tougher questions. No problem. All good. Navigate them. And then we go to Vancouver. And in Vancouver, big city, you know, producer's on the line. He's like, okay, like, you ready to go? I'm like, totally. Like, let's do this. It's my third one by now. I'm good. And I'm listening to the clip and almost all of the positive things are not there. And it's a lot of negative stuff that people are saying. And maybe that was just what the people of Vancouver were saying. I don't really know where they got all of the clips of people talking, but they're all chatting. And I'm just like sitting there, and I always film myself, like, or have a mirror if I'm doing radio interviews so I can watch my face, because if you're smiling, your voice sounds different. It's this funny little thing. I'm just like, oh no, no. And so then they cut to me and so I'm like, okay, deep breath, here we go. Like, this is probably gonna be a tougher interview. And it was. And so I knew that was happening. And so I'm trying to stall it. I'm like, they asked me one question and I'm like, oh yeah. And so then I like spend a lot of time. I was like, I know you only have so much time for me. So I spent a lot of time going into a lot of detail about one process that I didn't really need to, but I was like, just keep stalling. And then at the very end, like one of the tougher questions was like, so the BC government has a lot to navigate with this, between, you know, what small businesses need and what citizens need. What do you think we should do? And I'm like, I've lived in this province for like a year and a half. Like, I don't know. I just, but I can't say that. I can't go, I don't know. I just moved here. Like, that's not the answer you say on air. So I was able to navigate it okay. But if I would have had like an Apple Watch on me, I would love to see that health data of just the fear in my soul. And then immediately after, I had to email my bosses and be like, heads up, I don't know how they're going to edit this. This is what I said. I have a recording of it because I make sure to record my like radio on-air interviews so I know what it is, because I don't always get to hear it back sometimes. And it was one of those moments where like my boss was like, all good, no big deal. Next time, if they ask you a really tough question, here's what you should say, but you did really good. And it was like nice because I got a quick reply. I just felt like I watched my like career flash before my eyes for a brief moment. I was like, oh God, here we go.
It's so wild. Like live media is not even really a thing that much that frequently anymore, right?
And you don't expect it. Like there's certain media outlets you expect that from, and other ones you don't.
Yeah.
And especially because I'd had 2 interviews on the same topic beforehand, like back to back. I was like, life's good. Life was not good.
Always curveballs.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
What's next for you? We've chatted about ceramics. We've chatted about marketing. We've chatted about the new business.
Great question. I think the beauty of what's next for me is I don't know. And I love that. I have a mantra of like, if I do what I love, money will come, which is maybe delusional, but so far it's working. And that's great. But I think what's next for me is like continuing to find opportunities to work with entrepreneurs and founders, to tell their story, to give them clarity. I think with Fresh Ideas Club, that's a really big thing I'm focused on, is like, how can I make things easier for you? How can I become your like internal marketing team's best friend, that, you know, you're the one that gets called when they're in panic mode or they need a hand with something. I think I love where a lot of brands are going to now, where they're very explicit with their mission, very explicit with their brand values and what they're trying to do. And I think consumers are continuously paying attention to that. But yeah, as for what's next for me, I think like continuing to find opportunities to do cool stuff. Like at the end of the day, that's why I love working in marketing. That's why I love doing ceramics, is I got to do cool things that then in 10, 20, 30 years, I'll be like, wow, that was neat. Sweet. Like just kind of checking off a non-existent bucket list.
I think that's so important. And realistically, that's the only metric of success, right? Doing what you want and making sure, having fun doing it, right?
Totally.
Like, yeah.
And I think like finding opportunities to do that with people that you care about and that you think are interesting and smart. So I think what's next for me is just also trying to find more ways to keep being around cool, smart people.
Well, you're in the right place.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, awesome. Where can we send people to follow along what you've got going on?
So on socials, you can find me at slab.clay, so slab.clay. Those are my full government initials that I arranged to be in that order, actually, for my ceramics. Yeah, so that's where you can find me, freshideasclub.com. Find me on LinkedIn. Find me at FolkFest. In the public, come up and say hi. Don't be weird. I'll talk to you about whatever you want, as long as I also want to talk about it. If I don't, I'll make it awkward and walk away.
See you later.
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Thank you
no
so
time
much.
for stuff we don't want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Sam, thanks so much for being on. Really, really appreciate it today.
Thank you. It's been a treat, and always a treat to chat with you.